Board has set aside time at the beginning and end of regular meetings for public comments for members of the public to share their views on matters involving the Wilton Public Schools and to help inform the board's decisions on such matters. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to any one subject. For the record, please also give your name and address. The board considers the views of citizens in its deliberations and welcomes and appreciates public comment. The board listens to public comment thoughtfully and with interest. The board, however, generally does not respond to public comment during board meetings by offering commentary or answering questions. The board also invites commentators and the public to contact the board or the superintendent directly with any specific questions or comments. The board and the superintendent may respond to questions and comments offered during public comment or shared directly, and in responding may also direct members of the public to the appropriate staff for a response. Are there any comments from the public? In the room? On Zoom? Hearing none. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Nicola. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Laura. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. And now we move to reports and recognition.
Great. So we want to welcome Lee Goldstein, who is a CAVE representative from the Westport Board of Education. She's here representing CAVE tonight, and you all have won several awards through CAVE, and Lee's going to present them.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start with the part CAVE wrote for me to say. Good evening, Superintendent Smith and members of the Wilton Board of Ed and Administration. My name is Lee Goldstein, and I'm here on behalf of CAVE to recognize the efforts of Wilton Public Schools and to present you with these awards. In order to receive a Bonnie Carney Award of Excellence for Educational Communications, entries must meet all of the following criteria. First, it's the general criteria, which includes clarity of message, image, and consistency. And second, the specific guidelines of readability, editing, graphics type, format presentation, design, and value of expenditure. I'm very happy to present Wilton Public Schools with the Award for Excellence for Educational Communication for your district budget, the annual town meeting, Board of Ed chair slides, and the special project AV, Portrait of a Graduate. And I was thinking more personally, Wilton has extraordinary schools, and I know it's part of your town identity. People move here for the schools. And we're just going through we're one vote away from our final budget approval. And I always think, no matter how exhausting it can be in Westport, I don't know if it's exhausting here. I really appreciate it as an opportunity to explain the work that we do and to kind of share the pleasure and the pride we take in it with the funding bodies and with the community at large. And then at the same time, the budget is a means to an end, and that end are your graduates, right? The young adults you send forth into the world so richly endowed with a Wilton education. So these awards for both your budget presentation and your Portrait of a Graduate are really among the most important work we do, and the communication of it to the community is so important. So congratulations and thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Thank
here
you.
are
Great. Do you want to
so
Lee, would you be willing to take a picture with Ruth, maybe in front of our little, under our banner?
I know the kind of work this takes, so thank you.
Thank you. Oh, are we? Okay.
Picture?
Yeah. That's great. Super.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you all. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, everybody.
What a lovely way to start the meeting. Board Chair's report, I have none tonight, so we'll just turn to you.
Great, couple of things. Today I got a lovely email from Camille Carrero, who's the Executive Director of the Wilton Chamber of Commerce, and she was writing to Bob to Brian and to me, just to thank us about the partnership we have with them. With our video production class. So Maria Brees, who works downstairs, you may recall for a few years, I think we started this in like 2019, she's been taking her video production classes and working with the Chamber of Commerce and filming short promotional videos for different small businesses downtown. So they've done a bunch of them, and Camille was just writing to say, thanks again, it's been another great year working with Maria and those students, and there is a lot of interest and demand, and so we've got, plans to continue this next year. So I'll circulate the email tomorrow afternoon, but I just wanted to recognize that team. That's a program, again, you remember we started 5 or 6 years ago, and I just got enrollment numbers, registration numbers for next year, and as expected, it's very high demand. So all of her classes, Video 1, Video 2, Advanced Video Production. She's will be also teaching the sports broadcasting course, which you approved back in the fall, and they're all super subscribed. So we have well over 100 kids through the program. So really terrific, nice niche program, and again, excellent opportunity for our students.
Are the videos somewhere for us to see them?
That's a great question. They're probably on the Chamber website, so I'll try to find a couple, or I'll ask Lucille to kind of hunt around and see what we can send. The last one I saw was for the Ace True Value hardware store, Tom Sato's business. And it was great. So that was done, a couple months ago, just as they were getting ready to go into their new place. Yeah. A couple of other just quick updates. Again, the amazing Lucille put together for everybody a little show and tell, right? It's like a magician. The amazing Lucille. She has magically produced kind of a one-page refrigerator document that just is detailing all of the end-of-year events. And so, for parents, for all of you, as you know, we are now coming into the hold your breath. It's busy. We've got something going on, probably 3 things going on every night season. So for folks that just need an added glance, that exists. And then the last update I have is just about the calendar. You have one at your place. Lucille also updated that. And so just so people are clear, we'll run shortened days, June 14th, 15th, and 16th. June 16th will be the final day for high school students, for Middlebrook and Miller Driscoll staff and students. June 19th will be the last day for our friends over at Cider Mill,
Anybody wants to come play?
as well as our high school staff. And that June 19th will also be a shortened day, so the calendar is accurate and updated.
We don't have to meet an attendance requirement, do we?
We have to be in session.
Okay.
We will be in session.
We will be in session.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Yes, and it's our 181st day, and you remember last year we had the issue right about this time where we had all kinds of weather problems over there that caused us. Anyway, we won't go back there. So it's going to be amazing, and June 19th will be
You'll
the
have
last
2
day.
DeLucas.
Right. That's it. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Committee reports. Policy did not meet, did teaching and learning. Business ops met this morning. Everything we talked about will now be covered in item 5, financial reports.
Yep.
All of it?
No, well, so with the
We'll give a summary.
Do you want us to reenact?
yeah. It's,
It started at 7:30 a.m.
let's focus on the finances.
So the finances really haven't changed a lot from where we were. We're still watching everything very closely. We're still within budget, but it's tight. We haven't seen some of the savings that we were expecting to see, but we still anticipate to get them. A couple of things that did happen that was good is we did do on the town side, Jeff had done an RFP for diesel and gas, and we were able to lock in some very low rates. We won't see a lot of savings this year, but we will see a great deal of savings next year, or hopefully a great deal of savings next year. In addition to that, he has his RFP out there for the study of the buildings. We're looking forward to the details on that when that gets back. What else?
Carding contract. So we're going to switch. We've had city carding
Oh, yes.
for years, and so the town jumped to Oak Ridge a couple of years ago. Oak Ridge gave us very favorable pricing, and so we'll be back on a single contract between the town and the board, and we'll go ahead and execute that in the next few days.
Okay. What else did I miss? Anything?
You want to just note the transfers?
Oh, in your packets, I believe you have transfers. These are the transfers that occurred for the month of March.
Yeah, so nothing out of the ordinary.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Great, questions?
Review and discuss. I believe math update.
Great, so Chuck and I are-
There's a lacrosse game tonight. Come on.
Oh, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to review the latest administration of math. What I've done here is I've just updated the slide deck that it seems like we just reviewed a little while ago, but it includes the spring update. Yeah, okay, so what we have here is reading and math at Cider Mill. You notice we have fall, winter, and spring. I think the bright spot here is third grade reading. We're making some nice gains. The others, not so much. The important thing to remember here is that the test gets harder from fall to winter to spring because the kids are learning throughout the year. So kids are learning. What we're not doing, though, is increasing the number of students who really benchmark. So I'm just going to say this. A lot of people think the pandemic is over. Pandemic-related unfinished learning is not over. And we need to maintain the level of urgency that we had last year. The fact of the matter is the accelerating learning framework and responsive teaching have to become business as usual. And for me, it really doesn't matter if it's pandemic-related or not. We have persistent achievement gaps. And so those practices that brought around the growth last year really need to be, again, part of business as usual going forward.
Do you feel like we're not doing that?
I remember last year I said that my biggest fear
I do.
was that we would regress to the mean, and I'm concerned that we have gone back to business as usual before. I think we need to double down on the acceleration framework.
I'm guessing we shared this.
Okay, we go on to the next one. These next few slides I've shown you before.
So if you guys have shared this and discussed it, why is it not happening?
I can't answer that. Jen, I really do think it is happening in some places. Like everything else here in Milton, it's the level of consistency and variability that we need to address. In some of our schools, I think they've been distracted by other things. And again, I think we've gone back to normal. And back to normal for many of our teachers is to go back to doing things the way they were. People were very concerned about the level of unfinished learning, and we really worked hard at it, and we made some really great achievements. And I think I think it's natural. It's been my experience always that once you achieve what you need to do, you kind of sit back and think it's all done and okay. But the fact of the matter is we have lingering effects of unfinished learning. That 4th and 5th grade cohort, those are two vulnerable cohorts. We're going back to some of their earliest educational experiences were not normal. And to think that, once they've achieved what we think they should achieve, we can go back to it. It's not. They're going to continue to have learning problems. So we really do need to make this business as usual.
Do you think last year there were more checks in place and we have fewer checks in place this year, and that's why it's not as consistent as it was last year? I mean, last year was incredible.
Yes,
truly.
it was.
So are we just not are they not having as many meetings and checking on it as often as they were last year? Is that, what needs to happen to make it go back to what it was last year?
I think there needs to be greater monitoring of what's happening.
So how do you guys make that happen?
Well, we attend meetings, 18 meetings. We review data. We have data workbooks. Those need to be reviewed constantly. We have to make sure teachers are entering their data and then using that data to inform instruction.
Who does all that fall on?
A number of different people. I think the coordinators do a lot of that work, the coaches do a lot of that work, and the administrators do a lot of that.
And I'm happy, we'll talk about that when we'll have a chance to.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So this is just a disaggregation of the data I just showed you. It's reading for all students, reading for general ed, reading intervention, and special ed services. In general, across the year, we want to see this. Increasing numbers of students meeting benchmark. You can see, as I said, third grade is a bit of a bright spot. We do see increasing numbers of students and a decreasing number of students. Do the next one. Fourth grade reading, again, we're maintaining from the winter, but we have dropped from the fall. And what's disappointing for me here is this. Now, part of the problem with this group is that kids come in and out of intervention and in and out of special ed. So we're not necessarily comparing the same groups of students. Although you'll see in the prior slide, we did see an increase, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. In fifth grade. And again, this downward trend kind of has been reached, so we're going to keep on going. Next one is math. You know, again, the kids are learning, but they're not increasing the number of students meeting benchmark, which is what we need to do. Next one. Same here. Again, this is just, you saw the data in the first slide. This is just different ways of looking at it. And then the final one is really fun. Again, this was a nice increase. All right, so I do think this is a bit of a bright spot. You notice that although it's relatively flat, there is some increase. You know, to a certain extent, Middlebrook was in good shape to begin with. They're high achievement. We haven't necessarily added a lot of kids at benchmark, but the trajectory is there. I'm particularly happy about this and this. You know, you may not have been here when these numbers in 7th and 8th grade and math
Yeah.
were really concerning. So we're seeing some really good growth here. Okay.
And is it typical with Middlebrook to kind of see the 7th and 8th grade bump from 6th grade? You know, you see when,
See, these are different cohorts.
right,
I don't recall seeing a big bump.
the differential between 6th and 7th grade
I did in math.
in math. Okay.
The math team in 7th grade is particularly strong, so we do generally see it.
Okay.
And again, just the numbers looking a little bit differently. Again, I like the fact that we're seeing some increase here. Next one. Just very flat. 8th grade. This concerns me. But again, these are different kids. I need to dig in and see what happened. They may have entered a lot of, they may have exited a lot of kids who were reading grade level and entered a lot more.
It's also important when you look at the special ed side, all through the year, kids who don't do well in intervention go to special
Right.
education more likely. So the kids in the red in intervention join the kids in the red in special education. So it's hard to, it's not the same cohort in September as it is in June. And that is the same with each year. At the elementary level, you see large numbers of referrals at that age group. And so those numbers aren't always the same group of students. So it's hard just looking at that graph to say something is or is not working because you don't know who we're talking about.
What we're going to do in the future is to break this out. There's a thing called a matched cohort. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at kids who were in intervention and special ed throughout the year. Then we'll also look at kids who enter and how they do, and kids who are exited mid-year, they maintain them. So, you know, this is new for us, so we decided it would be, we could better interpret the data if it was the same kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So next one. Again, very happy to see this. Many of those kids were in your AIM program. Okay, you can move to the next one. We're going to look at cohorts. Let's look from second to third grade. That cohort, we did increase the number of students getting benchmark from spring to spring. Slight decrease from third to fourth. A very big decrease from fourth to fifth. Modest increase from fifth to sixth. Modest increase, but it's nice and maintaining it. Let's look at math. So second to third, quite a drop. A little bit of an increase, nice increase. Pretty much status quo, but from sixth to seventh.
Yeah, that's huge.
And from seventh to eighth, we're seeing some nice growth. All right, so I want to caution you in looking at this, these are the estimated projections. The numbers aren't bad, right? Generally speaking, this has been pretty accurate. Although you recall last year, it was not as accurate for some year. We can't quite figure out why, because in prior years they were pretty much spot on. But we're hopeful. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? And that's amazing.
So, do we have kind of an understanding of maybe what the numbers or how big the lift is from, let's say, that level 2 to get to level 3?
Yes, we call those students approaching benchmark.
Yeah.
And that's been the focus of the work that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks.
Okay.
Karen and Trudy give the schools and the teachers and the IET teams the names of those students. And then what's good about the map is it will tell you what those groups of students need to practice, what they need to review, and what they're ready to learn.
Okay.
So it pretty much gives to the teachers the things that they should be doing over the next couple of weeks.
So do the SBA projections come out of the map data?
Yes, the map is correlated highly with VSMAP. It's not a perfect correlation. So it's 88% accurate for an individual student. But again, in prior years, it's been almost spot on with the accurate. And last year, for some reason, it was not accurate with some. Okay, so this will be the math. Very concerning here, very concerning, but very nice and simple. Now again, we used to be in the 60s, so sure it's a good spot. We do need to double down again, so I should figure out what this score is. Any questions? Okay. I did want to have the principals share with you their plans for the next few weeks. And ask some questions. You can start.
So first, obviously, the scores are not where we would like them to be, but I am going to respectfully disagree that I do not believe it's business as usual, and I would invite anybody in to come into our schools and really attend one of the IETs, and where we really are, you can watch the responsive lesson planning in process. It is something we've been doing since the beginning of the year, so it is one of our strategies that we will continue to do, but I want you guys to know, because I think it's important that our teachers know our students. They are very concerned. It's having an impact on kind of how they are feeling at this point, our teachers. So I can tell you that it is not business as usual, and I want you to know that, because that would be concerning to me if I heard that. And I can share with you that we know, where Chuck had said, with these students who are approaching benchmark, every time we take the MAP assessment, those students kind of like ebb and flow out of that. We know who those students are, even as administrators, we know who they are. When we visit with our IETs, we talk about what kind of services, additional services are they getting? Are they having, is this group of kids in the win block cycle for math? Are they getting math intervention? Like who's meeting with them in groups? So I want to assure you that there is no lack of focus or emphasis on the test scores, or not only the math, but the additional information that we have on a daily basis. It is concerning, I'm not denying that, that is not where we want our scores to be, and so we continue to strategize different ways. We're actually moving into next week having focus groups that I think will kind of bubble up some additional strategies. I think we only shared probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, but one of the things we had done was have empathy interviews with our staff to kind of figure out, for staff that was meeting with success, what do you think is working, right? Like what resources, what tools, what is working for you? And we've really kind of doubled down on a lot of that. So for example, I'll just give, I don't want to talk too long, but something like Map Accelerator, right? We saw a lot of success in the data where certain teachers who were using it for longer amounts of time or more frequently for homework, we identified that as something that can have a positive impact on the students. So we kind of we shared a lot of practices through that way. So that's one thing that we're doing. We also, again, are trying to bridge some gaps with the curriculum in regard to language, whether it be for testing language, and so very meaningfully integrating and reinforcing how the test assesses versus maybe what some of the language is in our curriculum, being very intentional about that. We continue to focus on the key aspects of vocabulary, academic vocabulary, just widespread kind of knowledge and trying to build up the reading stamina of kids. We have noticed that the reading stamina is still not where it was for our children, pre-COVID. And also just the volume of reading. So I would say vocabulary, volume, stamina are things that we're really, really focused on for the literacy. For math, we continue to do the win block math that has been very successful. When we look at the, just another form of data that is consistently looked at is the pre and post exit slips that we look at. And this data is used to set up those win block cycles. I think I've shared that with you guys. It's not like a intervention per se, but it's almost something that can support our students before they get into the unit of study, where we kind of are trying to fill some of the learning gaps. So in the last 2 weeks, I just sat through quite a few different IETs where teams were kind of looking through the data, comparing to their exit slips. And again, I welcome you to come into the school because I think it's important that you hear that our teachers are taking this very seriously. This is not business as usual. And they have not let up the focus on trying to figure out what we need to do to help these kids succeed. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but more than anything, I welcome you and to come see the work in action.
So what do you think is different than this year than from last year?
For fourth grade, I don't know. What's I think is interesting, you have except for our students that left us, right? We have the same teachers. I can assure you that the practices are not different. I do think some of the issues around stamina, volume, I do think we are consistently dealing with, and I don't want to use this as an excuse because I still need to grow, the SEL behavioral needs that we have going on a regular basis with our students is significant. I mean, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be growing, but it does impact the level of consistent engagement that sometimes can happen in the classroom. So I do believe that is a barrier right now at times. I do think that there are some gaps in what's being assessed and kind of maybe how the curriculum is written. We continue to find that. We're very anxious for all of our grade levels to move over to the IM curriculum. I have concerns that for financial reasons that I understand that we're going to be rolling it out over a much slower period of time because I think our math scores show that it would behoove us to kind of move forward, so I think that that's one thing. I mean, I guess I don't think it's lack of, I want to make it clear our teachers are working really hard, and we work with the coaches, we work with the coordinators, we are given lots of information, and we have no shortage of data, I can tell you that. So it's definitely not that.
Yeah, we're doing focus groups with the staff next Wednesday afternoon, and so I think, it'll be an opportunity after that I can summarize that either in writing or we can come back to the table and just share
Happy to do that.
kind of what,
But in the meantime,
what we hear from
please come
staff.
out.
So I'm not, trying to say that there isn't work, work and effort. I'm concerned about the trend.
I hear you.
And I think that's what's most concerning to me, that
And I understand.
it's, last year, everything trended one way, and this year, everything is trending a completely different way. And I think that's trying to,
Understand it.
and so that's, kind of looking at, where things are different. I mean, I would definitely be interested to hear from teachers where they might think things
Sure.
are
And that's
are
why-
diff-
that's
are
why we're
different.
doing that.
Yeah, and just especially as kids are exiting
Yep.
Cider Mill, and the current third graders were kindergarten lockdown. It's just building. It's just building up, and I feel like we had something that was working. So I just and it might just be something as simple as we're just maybe trying to do too many things at once, and sometimes I think about this all the time about what it means to be back or to be normal. And maybe was the normal before this really working to begin with, and kind of reframing that idea a bit. So that's kind of where I'm just ruminating and living. I'm sure like everybody else when we look at this, the puzzle in front of us.
Yeah, we looked at instructional time, and like you said, finding that balance. We tried to cut down on concerts and trying to align, trying to minimize, like we used to do high huddles, right? Where we used to pull everybody together, and we've stopped things like that to minimize taking away more instructional time, right? And so, we are in a place where that is definitely I know one of the things that's going to come up in the focus groups is that there is a feeling of people being torn, right? We have a lot of things that happen, right? We have concerts. We have, in the spring, you feel it. It's like the field trips, the concerts. It's if you looked at our daily schedules, you would see that, right? And so I think that is a conversation to have. I mean, we've tried to minimize the impact on instructional time, but the reality is we still have all the concerts and all of the practices that go along, with running a concert, and we run our field trips, right?
Yeah, and so I don't think, I just, kind of looking at what does, balance mean, what do these kids, need throughout the entire year. So I will certainly be looking forward to kind of hearing more about what's going on.
We can share a summary of what happens from the focus groups. I think that'd be a nice way to.
Yeah, and
Good.
yeah.
So I know you mentioned the social emotional behavior concerns. Is it, I'm imagining it's one child, but it impacts the entire classroom if something occurs.
So I can share, for example, for today, had my regular day planned. I was counting, we had dinner beforehand. There were 5 pretty significant events that happened over the course of the day in different classrooms that definitely took off, you know what I mean? And that's just me. I've got 2 other colleagues that were dealing with it's consistent, where you see children, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on this tonight because I know we've been trying to share through the SEL work and everything that kids are doing, but we just see a lack of being able to cope, and how to navigate simple things like friendships, right? Friendship dynamics, and it takes a lot of time, right, to address some of what we see in the classroom. And again, that's just one thing that I think is different, right? I don't think it's the be-all, end-all. It doesn't mean these scores should be where they are. I'm not using it as an excuse by no means. But it's one thing.
It only takes a couple of kids to blow up a building, and once the building blows up, then it's all, then it's all day to bring it back.
Right now. Look, when I come back and we share, and I think Chuck and Kevin are both going to be help us participate and facilitate some of the groups. I know it's going to come up. And that's not going to be a surprise to me either.
I'm only asking because I know we've had conversations in the past about what could we do at Cider Mill to support our kids and our teachers, and I know budget always seems to get in the way of what we'd like to be doing.
Right.
It's just a conversation for, I think, us to keep having, and maybe for our community to still be aware of that it's there and it impacts.
And I can tell you, like, to have a conversation, if you ever wanted to participate with some teachers, they're aware and they want to do what's best for our kids. So.
Great. Joe?
Thanks. So prior to spring break, and certainly since then, our teachers have really dug into and reflected on their students' performances, and humanities coordinator has been a big part of that as well, but identifying what adult actions are going to impact the student learning positively. They also identified any perceived barriers to achievement and began to consider how they were going to adjust and what they needed to do to move forward, obviously with about 5 weeks before the ESPA administration. So a little more specifically, in grade 6 for ELA, the teachers are engaging the students in true student reflection on their own learning, and not only just from the most recent administration, but how did you do in the fall? What does it look like in the winter? What does it look like now in the spring? And really helping them to set goals. And those are very illuminating. I have some fun conversations with the 6th grade ELA teachers because it's fascinating to hear these 11-year-olds say, oh yeah, I just guessed and I didn't really answer. And it's like, I'm telling myself to make sure you understand these skills, right? It's that sort of thing. And then other kids who look at it and say, wow, I thought I really tried my best. And then they start setting goals and specifically talking about what is it that they were really struggling with. But really trying to leverage those aspects of reading strategies that they've learned this year, making sure that they're always using them as they work. Grade 7 teachers are embedding IAB, which is the interim assessment STEMs and ESPA STEMs, into their weekly instruction. And that's really an all-year practice, but they're continuing to do that as they hone in on those areas of relative weakness. The NWEA in Learning Continuum is such a great resource for the teachers because it also allows them to see exactly what are those things, what are those skills that the children are ready to learn, what are the ones that they're struggling with, and what are those areas that, okay, we're going to really push them. Grade 7 and 8 teachers in ELA also began to study instructional and collaborative practices that are in place on teams where the achievement gap is a little greater with between regular and special ed children, and where it's narrower and where we might learn a little bit that you were talking about, learn from where it's working well. And certainly all teachers are being supported by the humanities coach as they embed some of the test preparation and practice, certainly aligned to those areas of relative weakness as identified in the March map, but also into their instruction over the next couple of weeks before ESPA. As far as math is concerned, the math teachers have been reviewing the data as well for each of their classes, and they do that with Trudy as well to coordinator. Teachers discuss the student progress in areas where they need continued growth. We're also engaging in the same sort of continual goal setting with students. Again, it's very illuminating when you have those conversations with the students and they are acknowledging some of those areas that they struggled with or where they admitted mailing it in. And teachers are including using the ESPA questions from their focused IABs, or FIABs we call them, into their weekly and ongoing targeted review work with the students. And attention is really being given to students. You heard Chuck talk a little bit about it, but the big focus being on those students that are approaching benchmark. It's a big focus with those kids. And certainly the content areas where students can benefit from revisiting. And teachers will continue to teach the curriculum for the remaining weeks of the instruction and ensure that students are going to experience more of the grade level content before the ESPA administration.
Can I just say, the goal setting exercises that the teachers are doing with the kids, is that new to this year? Is that something that you've been doing for the last 2 years? I'm just...
2+ years.
2+ years.
Been doing. You know, I think probably what's different is really pulling that information from the learning continuum through the NWA, where what's really wonderful about it is when you look at what a student's RIT score is, and that will actually identify what are those areas of weakness, areas of that they're ready to learn. And it really highlights it. When you think about it this way, it gives the teacher all the ammunition they need to say, okay, this is my small group instruction because I know these children need the same.
Right. No, I'm just curious if you've seen, if there's a way to measure perhaps, or kind of even just qualitatively understand that interaction between and the ownership by the student, kind of understanding by the student if it's having some of the positive effects that we're seeing.
And Jerry has an 8th grade math teacher who's been doing it, I think, longer than 2 years. And he has consistently shown some of the highest growth in the district in that setting. You know, Jory and I both sat in on IET yesterday in 6th grade reading, and it was just interesting how they figured out where the kids were falling down. It was all through analysis.
Right. Shocker.
Yeah. But it was a nice IET, a very good IET work, facilitated by the coach and by Karen.
Right. And then that leads to, all right, what's next? And what do we need to do, teacher, coach, specifically about planning for, and then what's that going to look like in the classroom? So it's a nice through line there as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Other questions, comments?
Any other? Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's move on to a cheerier discussion, budget reductions.
Yay. So I shared at the last meeting a draft document that outlines a series of possible reductions that amount to the $1.4 million. I don't really have any substantive changes to this list yet, except to say there was one row here where I laid out, kind of 3 possibilities. It was a 5th grade classroom. It was 2 certified science teachers, or the 0.6 strings and the 2 half-time science paras. We've really focused on that third option. I met with the 2 FAPA ILs earlier this week and just asked them to work with me to try to come up with a plan so we could continue to cover 3rd grade strings and do it in a way that's not going to require us to pay overages. So they've committed to kind of going back and looking at that. So I've taken the idea of even contemplating reducing a 5th grade classroom off the table, and so I think we can focus on that one. We'll figure out something that'll allow us to hold on to the 2 certified science teachers, certainly the 5th grade math class, and we'll figure it out. As Dawn mentioned earlier as well, with the new contracts for diesel and for gas, we should see some savings. I haven't reflected those here yet. It's we're still in a kind of pretty dynamic budget period. So as we just kind of move through the rest of this year, we'll lock in what those numbers are actually going to be, and then that should impact even in a minor way what's on this list. In looking at what this list looks like, as I'm talking to different people, I've also started to generate what are we going to add back if we have opportunities. And so, Fran Compar has made a very compelling case if we're able to add back one of the halftime pairs here at the library center, here in this media center, just given the needs and what the two media specialists will be doing here in the media center next year. They're both going to be teaching courses, and so I'm starting to generate that list. And so, at least preliminarily on the add back column, that's at the top right now. But that's another area I'll just continue to keep you updated as we move forward. We'll be meeting with Maria, it's either tomorrow or early next week, to look at what the RIF list is going to look like. And again, I would just say to everybody and to anyone who might be listening, it's dynamic right now, and so things may shift. They probably will shift, and that's because we always get either a few resignations or retirements that we're not anticipating, and it just reshuffles the deck. So we'll see. I'm going to talk about healthcare here in a second, but I'm kind of crossing my fingers and hoping that we also get a little more savings than we're anticipating there, which also, again, fingers crossed, will have a beneficial impact. But some of the things may not come through until even in the summertime. So just thinking about what this budget will actually look like, will make the reduction to the appropriation that the Board of Finance has set. I'm hoping everybody comes out and votes yes to support this budget. I don't support the no too low approach. I think no could be really bad, and I don't want to be in a position where it's a no and we have to go back and revise our budget even lower. And so I completely understand the no too low approach, but for me, I'm going to be voting yes as a resident.
I don't think everybody understands.
Yeah, I know. And I was having a conversation with the PTA presidents a couple of days ago. I think it was even yesterday. And it's just, it's not. We're not in a great situation with the reduction as it is. But I think it could be worse. And I do think that we saw for whatever stock you put in the feedback we got through the Board of Finance survey, people are concerned about their taxes. And anyway, I don't want to be in a situation where we have to take another X amount of dollars out of the budget. So,
is there a way that I know we're not really, can't really get into that and talking to the community about it, but what can we do?
Well, at this point, you as an individual can advocate till you're blue in the face. The referendum is now, kind of pending under SEEC, and so municipal resources can't be used to support a position in a referendum at this point in the game. So, we can remind people date, time, location. We can encourage people to show up. We can share information. But you as individuals, can encourage people to, do it, whatever you think they should do.
The confusion now is also the turf. People think that if they vote no to that, then that money will go back to the school.
Yes, so I think, thank you for raising that.
There's so much miscommunication, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I saw somebody sent me something, and there was somebody had put a blurb out about that, give it whatever the $2 million that would be slated for the turf to the schools. So that's an inaccuracy, okay? And so, again, just for people that are listening, I was just on the sideline at the girls' lacrosse game, and somebody mentioned that to me a few minutes ago. The turf field is going to be bonded, so those are bonded funds. That is not going to impact our operating fund. There's not $2 million that can be reallocated from the proposed bond to our budget. They're entirely separate things, and so one does not influence the other.
I'm glad that the library, the high school library paraprofessionals are at the top of your list, because we've done so much over the last 5 years to make the LLCs such parts of our school. And I know at Middlebrook and I think at Cider Mill and the high school, the kids have so much opportunity to just hang out in that space, and whether it's at lunchtime, do you still do that in Middlebrook?
Yes.
I just worry that it doesn't, cutting two people doesn't sound like a lot, but that's like half of the paraprofessional coverage in the libraries.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 0.5, right? So, but understood, your point is well made. And
I just worry that if there's one paraprofessional here, that there's so much space. Just stopping the kids eating in the library sometimes takes a lot of effort. I just worry from a safety perspective. I was here today, and there were 80 kids in the LLC. The teaching that the Tara and Keith are going to have to do next year seems like it's a heavier lift for them. And then there's one less para in the building. I just, if anyone from the Board of Finance wants to write a check to cover $71,000 to cover the paraprofessionals, I just think that they impact so many students.
The 0.5 for this, I've got to confirm Fran's number, but she suggested to me today it's about $18,000, and so I need to kind of work that out. So that's, in an $89 million budget, that's not a lot of money, but our money goes to a lot of different places, and we're stretched everywhere.
I know, but it's just for the community to understand that this is just emblematic of, it's one cut in the LLC, but there's broken furniture in the LLC. When it rains, it leaks through the roof in the high school library. I mean, these cuts hurt. The library is a safe, special place for so many kids. It's a place to escape from the craziness of school. And if there is anything we can do to keep the LLCs funded and just the happy, the exciting, creative spaces that Fran's managed to create over the time she's been here. That would be top of my list too.
Yeah, okay, that's good feedback. So, and I don't know if anyone else has any other. I don't really have much to offer. I don't have anything to offer that's new or different, other than that piece. Everything else will be. I think what I would say is, we'll continue to carry forward unless there are some real objections here. With what's on this list, we'll, hopefully the town meeting will be successful. Our budget will be our budget, and then, through the, next several weeks and months, we'll continue to just refine and see where we are. And then I think, likely, once we kind of get through all that, probably in the late summer, we'll come back to the board with a completely revised budget that'll match whatever decisions, have been made here. And then, we can probably actually, we talked about, does the Board of Ed need to vote on it again? And I don't technically think you do, but it might be worth a vote to accept, just so that's official and it's on record. And then that becomes, kind of how the budget's allocated through the remainder of next year.
Any other questions on the budget? So, healthcare.
Well, healthcare. As you know, earlier this winter, the district went out to bid for a new carrier. Cigna came through with the most competitive bid, which generated over the course of 3 years just over $1.1 million in savings. And so what that would look like in those 3 years, we would have somewhere in this first year between maybe $100,000 and $150,000 in savings. And these are primarily in fixed fees that the insurance companies charge us through, like administrative fees. And so they've really they want our business, and so they've come in with a really, really competitive rate. They came working on stop loss and some other features that are baked into our insurance program. And then in the 2 out years, we'd be looking at somewhere around $500,000 each year in savings. So, given the conversation we just had, that savings coupled with what they offer compared to what we currently have, to me, this is a good, smart decision. So we had finalist meetings the week before we went out on break. We had Cigna in, we had Anthem in, and, they presented their proposals. Again, Cigna was good. I think, some of the, most salient features of those presentations were really around coverage and what our consumers, our staff can expect who, participate in our healthcare program. Cigna proposed that there is about a 98% provider match. And so they just sent some updated numbers today, and it's like 97.5 or 97.7, so they're really close. In terms of formulary, it's like 100% match, so that's really good news. So for most people that are participating in our program, the only change that they'll experience is the change in the card. We will have some staff who will experience some disruption, because there's some people who use some of those providers that either are, in network right now with Anthem and won't be in network with Cigna, or they'll be, I think the other example they gave is some of the providers have, different discount rates. So some of the doctors rather, so they might have a better discount rate with Anthem than they do with Cigna, or vice versa. In my read, looking at the total numbers, and I can share some of these, if you like. So let me just read this list. So this stuff just came in this afternoon. So of all of the providers that are currently utilized, 92.6% are in network with Anthem. So that same group, 94.5 would be in network with Cigna. So there's a slightly better in-network match. That's great news. Of all of the Anthem in-network providers, 97.7 are also in-network with Cigna. So that's that kind of 2.3% disruption. For behavioral health, the match is lower. So the behavioral health, it's an 87.8 in-network match. So what in those situations, what our broker kind of agrees to with Cigna would be a transition of care. So if there's not a comparable provider or the provider's not in network, they would just set up an opportunity to kind of, keep our staff member whole for a period of time until they can make the switch to another in-network provider. Did I get that right? Okay. So what was interesting for the biggest areas of kind of difference are in behavioral health and in chiropractic care, and they're not significant. They're not huge. So right now, for example, for behavioral health care providers, 76 of the in-network providers with Anthem are out of network with Cigna. But when we talked about that with Cigna, they have this kind of recruitment process, and then they invite these providers to come and participate in the network. Interestingly, there are 143 providers who are in network with Cigna, but out of network with Anthem. So if we have folks who are using those providers, it'll actually be better for them, and there's twice as many. So that was good news. A couple of other points here. Of the top 50 most utilized providers, 92% of them are in network with Cigna. And then of the top 50 most utilized who are in network with Anthem, 94% of them are in network also with Cigna. So all of that is to say there's a really high level of provider match. When we had the finalist meetings, we invited representation from all of the unions. We had representation here from all of the unions. The CEA has their own kind of healthcare expert, and he was very informative in the room, asked great questions, asked some follow-up questions to our broker afterwards. And at this point, what we've heard, we haven't heard any objections anywhere, whether it's from the WA or any of the other unions, to making this change. The commitment that we have from our broker, Brown & Brown, is that they'll do everything in their power to make this as smooth and seamless as possible. And so, what I would say to all of you is, it is, just given kind of all of the facts and the analysis, this is a good change that I think we need to go ahead and make. It'll benefit us financially. It'll be, probably minimally impactful across the whole. And then, we'll do everything in our power with our broker, with Tracy, with the people here, Marie, and so on, just to support the people who do experience, disruptions, whatever they may be.
Any questions for Kevin?
bit of a novice at this American healthcare thing, but the co-pays, they will all remain the same.
So the co-pays would be, so what people essentially pay, and so in the structure of the healthcare system, like where our folks participate in a high deductible plan, right? So like none of that structure changes. The co-pays wouldn't change. I think, going back to which doctors offer which discounts, which it's highly variable. Like that's where people may notice some differences. Right, so under Anthem, if the doctor, discounts by $100 under Cigna, maybe it's 50 or maybe it's 200. But that's dependent upon the individual provider. Yeah, is there any other information?
I think you covered pretty much everything.
And the unions are happy with it?
I don't know if they're happy or not happy, but they have not, nobody has expressed any change. And I think, when, we'll kind of formalize the transition, we'll have information sessions with our staff. I think likely what will happen is as people, who are really kind of connected to their health care, when they start to do the comparison, like then we'll get questions about what those differences might be, and there'll be kind of individual questions. I think looking at the numbers aggregately, we're not going to have scores of people showing up with major concerns. I'm sure we will have some, and we'll just have to work with them on a case-by-case basis as best we're able.
Cool.
It's always disruptive to change carriers, but it sounds like there are companies that do it every year. So it looks like we're not putting our staff through that.
No, and I think Cigna has a very good reputation. They have served a neighboring school district for a long time. I talked to that superintendent, and he shared they've been very happy, and so I took that as good news.
I'm encouraged by their commitment to make the process as smooth as possible and our ability to hold them to that commitment.
Yes. Mm-hmm. No, and their bid, I think, spoke for itself. Like it was a really, and we got great feedback from our broker. They want Wilton, they want Wilton's business, and so they put forth a bid that really reflects that.
I know next item was to review and discuss the mental health task force, and with everyone's okay, we're going to table that conversation to the next meeting.
Yeah, that's okay.
As we kind of still work out some of the pieces.
Yep.
Next on the agenda under possible action items is the second read to discuss and approve policy 3542.43, food service charging. As we discussed at the last meeting, the changes incorporate some legislative changing and some language around the prevention of public identification or shaming for food services. Does anybody have any questions about this? Is there a motion to approve the changes to policy 3542-4.43, food service charging?
I so moved.
Thank you, Pam. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Laura. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Next is to discuss and approve policy 6163.1, selection of school library materials. Everybody has the policy and then the accompanying regulation, which incorporates some changes to fully effectuate the policy.
Yep.
Is there any discussion or questions on this? Is there then a motion to approve policy 6163.1, selection of school library materials?
So moved.
Thank you, Nicola. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
And then the last item is to discuss and approve policy 5145.1, suicide prevention and intervention. And this was also incorporated some changes and suggestions from council and aligns with current practice. Is there any discussion or questions? Is there a motion to approve policy 5141.5, suicide prevention and intervention? Thank you, Laura. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to future business and information. We discussed earlier in the evening that there is a new lovely document that was made with Lucille Magic, which will be distributed, right?
I'm going to send it out, school messenger.
School messenger, so everybody can have it on their phones and print it out and put it on their refrigerator. So thank you very much. Also attached is the current enrollment report. As discussed earlier, the annual town meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 2nd, in person with adjourned voting following the meeting on Saturday, May 6th. I encourage all community members to attend.
Please.
Come and support the school budget, please.
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock. Right here in the Clinton Center. The next regular meeting for the Board of Education will be on Thursday, May 4th, followed by Thursday, May 18th, and then again on June 1st. The board has set aside time at the beginning and end of regular meetings for public comments for members of the public to share their views on matters involving the Wilton Public Schools and to help inform the board's decisions on such matters. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to any one subject. For the record, please also give your name and address. Are there any public comments? None in the room, none on Zoom? Thank you. The meeting is adjourned at 8:08. Go see the